Hello everyone, Kim Victoria here, and today's video is a tutorial about the making of this journal, and it was based on this journal. So this video is dedicated to and in appreciation of Kimberly, who requested this tutorial, and I do appreciate that kind of comment. It helps me to know what to make next. I made this journal with the idea of using both, well, some scraps, but also in the making of the journal, the idea was that I was using some scrapbook paper and I wanted to use up all the scraps from making the journal in the journal. So the scraps from cutting down scrapbook paper became tags and journal cards and whatnot. So that was the focus of this, which was just a flip through. And it came out just a really nice, kind of a book size journal. And I appreciate the request to make a tutorial because once that journal sells, I need a video so that I remember how I made this. So you're seeing the final product, at least I think it is. There might be a couple more things that go in it. I want to let you know that the very beginning of the tutorial, well, the camera wasn't on, and probably I just had a twitchy finger and didn't record. So it picks up with the cover in process. So hopefully that will be enough to let you know how that was done. These, I've made other covered, like cloth covered journal covers, and so has Natasha, so have other people. So anyway, that you got a little sneak preview. So now I'm going to start the tutorial, and well, I hope you get some ideas. Thanks for being here. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I recorded this operation, and I guess my finger did a twitch or something, and I turned it on and turned it off again. Anyway, let me go through this a little bit for you. Let's see. The size. I chose to do this in a little smaller size than I usually do because I'm working with an American letter size 8.5 by 11 paper, and so normally I just make journals that will fit that. I decided on these last few journals to make ones that are a little bit smaller. So this is a little bit more like a book size. I wanted a little bit of a smaller book. And so this one is a different size. My pages are going to be 5 by 7 folded. So these signatures are going to get cut down to a 5 by 7 size. So I fold them all and collate, and then I cut them down. So these will be 5 by 7 instead of 5.5 by 8.5. That would be the normal. So the cover, I like to make the cover just a little bit bigger by a 1/2 inch, so it gives it a little bit of a margin all the way around. So the cover is 5.5 by 7.5 inches, and this spine is 1 3/4 inches. Now, those of you who are working with A2 size paper, just scale it up or down to wherever you want it, okay? And what I am using, again, is this quilt batting. You could also use thin fleece. I don't know how a thicker fleece would work, but fleece fabric just gives it a little extra push, and it does one more thing. So let's start with the gluing. I'm using this 3-in-1 glue by Beacon, who also makes fabric tack. And frankly, I haven't been able to discern a difference between 3-in-1 and fabric tack. They're both acetone based, and they all seem to have the same consistency. If you know the difference, please let me know, but I've been using them interchangeably with perfectly good success. Okay, so I cut the cardboard out. I have a single sheet of the cereal box. If you want a stiffer cover, you might want to glue 2 pieces of the cereal box together to get a stiffer cover, but this is fine for this application. I did glue 3 pieces of the cereal box material cardboard together so that I'd have a strong spine. I think it's nice having a strong spine. Then I laid it on my fleece material, my quilt batting material, and just inked around it, cut that out, and then I knew exactly where to place the cardboard when I glued it on. And that's the first thing. So I would put glue on the cardboard and put it down correctly on the fleece. Then I did this side, and then I did this in the middle. And I knew that I was going to have these nice gaps so the book would fold easily. All right? So the other thing that's good about this quilt bat or fleece material is that this is thin cotton fabric. Okay? And the first thing I needed to determine was if there was a correct orientation. Well, the only orientation for this particular fabric is this up and down orientation, but it doesn't have a specific right way or wrong way other than that. But it's thin cotton material. So when I was ready to glue this to the material, the other nice thing about this material, this quilt batting, is that when I put the glue on it, it soaks in a little bit. Okay? So pretend this is not attached to the material yet. I put the glue lightly, just around the edge and just a little bit in the middle of the fleece material, and then flopped it over onto the fabric and just gently pushed it down, not too hard, and let it go. Then went over this way, and this is just the fleece material showing. Just keep that in mind. This is what this is showing. And I put a little, glue on just the spine and flop that over, and then put glue on the fleece over on this side of the cover. Not much, did I? But it's going to be okay. And then just flopped it over. So I was really, really light with the glue because I know I'm going to be folding it over like this. And that's really where it's going to hold on, because I can be a little bit heavier with this on the fabric, and that's one of the reasons I gave it 1.5 inch margins, is because I can have a little more glue out here, because that's going to get hidden. It's going to get hidden by the paper I put on the inside. So I hope that makes sense, since I didn't film it from scratch. So, okay. Got to be careful with the rest of this. So, and I always keep a rag handy, because I like to keep the glue on its side so that it's ready to come out, but it can get a little bit drippy. So I think that this is dry now, because I had to do a retake. And I'm ready to cut the fabric. So you could tear the fabric. I just decided I would not tear the fabric, and I'll be able to use some of this fabric for pockets and other things inside the journal, just like I did with the orange one. And the way I have found I like to miter the corners is I don't like to cut off a whole lot. This is very thin fabric. If you were using upholstery fabric, and I have other tutorials where I have used upholstery fabric, you want to cut off more. You might want to cut really close and then kind of fudge it in. But because this is such thin fabric, I don't need to cut off very much. I'm leaving quite a bit, because then when I fold it over, it'll just give it a more finished corner. It works out for me. So yeah, I like to fold over some when it's thin fabric. If it's thicker fabric, yeah, I like to cut off more. Make it more of a miter than what I'm doing here. But I do like to make sure that I get a nice corner and get that glue kind of set on that first fold. I hope that makes sense. And this will be reinforced by the paper that's going to go over the top. I'm also putting glue in the gutter. It's actually going onto the sides of the spine cardboard and onto the fleece underneath. And I have a little bit of bulk here, so I can just trim that. Okay, well, I guess you could kind of get the idea that I had to do a little bit of finagling and stretching and essentially cut little darts on a couple of places to stretch the fabric so that it would really go around the corner but still keep those points going, because I really wanted to have nice corners all the way around. And if you want to use book corners, of course, if they come out a little bit funky, you could always put book corners on all the corners, and that would work. So let's just look for some loose stuff, and we got a little bit of a looseness here, so just kind of and then, as I say, there's going to be paper over the whole thing, so that will be the final anchor. So I need one more piece, and that is in the middle, and I do want that. So okay, well, that's just the right size. There we go. So where do I want to cut it? I want to cut it right there. And since it's the same fabric, it's just merging. It's merging fine with the rest of the design. So when the paper goes over it, it will essentially disappear. I'm going to let this cover dry now in this closed state. So that will help it retain that shape. Now I used the bone folder to make sure that this is stuck down into those crevices. You can see now that's working. But yeah, I want to let it dry in this state so we can move on to signatures. I'll set this aside and we'll move on to signatures. I'm using my previous journal as a model. Okay, so one of the things when you're getting your scrapbook paper cut is that you might want to fold up the bottom. I mean, we've got 12 by 12 scrapbook paper. You might want to fold up the bottom on these signature pages, if you will. I chose not to. I chose to add pockets where I wanted and not add pockets on some of the other ones. I'm going to follow the same model for that. As I showed in the introduction, I already have these pages, but they need to be cut to size. But I'm going to go ahead and cut these pages so the signatures get all cut at the same time. Okay, there was something I discovered about this paper that I do want to say something about. Now, most of the time, whenever possible, let me say that, whenever possible, it's wonderful to let the paper tell you where it wants to be folded. This particular paper is contrary. I'm going to put it that way, because the way it wants to be folded is like this. This is where the grain of the fabric is. It's going in the way that these leaves will be pointing side to side. But my cover has all its leaves pointing up and down. So I'm going to be contrary to this paper, and I'm going to fold it against the grain. Okay? With the grain, folds easily. Against the grain, there's resistance. Well, I'm going to go ahead and fold it with the resistance, even so. And what happens a lot of times is when you fold it where it's resistant, the heavier papers. Now, see, this is not the super heavy scrapbook paper. It's not a card stock. It's heavier weight, but it's not super heavyweight. Okay, there are some really heavy double-sided cardstock like scrapbook papers. So this one I think is going to cooperate okay. So when I fold it, I don't think it's going to crack, but sometimes with the heavy ones, it will crack. Now, I want to keep as much as possible for the other parts and pieces that I'm going to use. I'm going to use the scraps inside this journal. So I know that my cover is 7.5 inches tall, but I want my pages 7 inches tall. So I'm going to first cut this down to 7 inches. I'm going to do that first because I want a maximum amount. I mean, that's 5 inches of good material there. So I just need to, now I could go to my guillotine, but I think I'll just do it right here. So I'm taking off 5 inches. And to make sure, because sometimes scrapbook paper is not exactly 12 by 12, I'm making sure it's 7 inches. So I'll just measure at 7 inches from now on. Yeah, so that's fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut all of these to 7 inches. These are going to be very useful. So the next dimension I need is, these are going to be 10 inches. So I need to cut 2 inches off, but I will measure it for 10 inches. Again, it's a little hard to see. And that'll give me 2-inch strips that'll be good as tags. Okay, and then the other thing about folding against the grain is if you do have a scoreboard, it will help. It will help it cooperate a little better because you'll be getting it started. But if you don't have a scoreboard, did not have a scoreboard for ages, and it was just fine. So now I have these 3, I just need 2 more. So I don't know if this is helpful, but I'm going to just explain a little bit of what I'm thinking about when I'm collating the papers. Is I want to alternate between styles or colors or technique or, stuff like that. So I have 2 that have lined papers. So different kinds of lines, but they're lined. So I don't want to put them right next to each other. It's just kind of like that, keep that variety going thing. And then this paper is dyed and this paper's dyed, so I don't want them next to each other. And this paper has a little bit of a pattern, and that has a pattern. And these signature cover pieces have a pattern, but not on the inside. So I could stamp on these, but I'm going to add maybe a pocket or different things to it, so I can decide that later. But having a plane next to something that has some kind of a visual texture, that looks nice. So that's what I'm thinking about when I collate. And this is, I've done a lot of collating in my life. So this one has a little bit of pattern on the inside, so I know I'm going to be doing something with that. So I start with the inside and just work my way across. And the other thing is, since I'm going to be cutting this down to a 5 by 7, I'm cutting it this way and this way, I also am thinking about the orientation. So for example, on this, when I cut this down, I'm going to be losing this strip that has the holes in it. And that's kind of where I'm going with that. So yeah, kind of finding the orientation at the same time as I'm collating. So this is always going to be the bottom of the signature. So that's what I have in mind. And I also only have 3 of these butterfly vellum pages. So I have 2 plain pages. So you can see how much is going to get cut off. But this will make a little mini notepad. That's what I did here. This is with the orange one. And these are these top offcuts made into just a fun little notebook. So that's what I have planned for these. So there's one signature, and I'm alternating between the leafy and the lattice. So that's what I have in mind. And then the other thing I'm going to do is round the corners, and I can do that. I can do a few sheets at a time, I think. Well, within reason. Don't get carried away. And I want to keep their alignment too. I don't want to have different size corners. There. So I'm going to go ahead and trim all 5 and round the corners, and I'll be right back. So my signatures are trimmed, rounded, and because this has an orientation, these leaves are all pointing upward, I went through just to make sure, even though I don't have any pockets yet, and I don't have anything particularly oriented on the inside, I did reverse a couple of my pages because, for example, I kind of wanted to have the white space on the top instead of the bottom of this grid paper. And the same thing goes for the lined paper. The butterflies are going in different directions, so I wasn't too worried about the butterflies or the ferns. So that was fine, but I did want to make sure on all of them that they were oriented so that it kind of was that right side up, the way I'd like it to be. So I want to go ahead and add some inside pages, and I was considering these different ones. So I have this offcut, which is the lattice, but I don't know, that just didn't feel quite right. And the offcut of this, again, the leaves are going sideways, and I just didn't think it worked too. I think those work better as tags or journal cards. But this is very simple. It's a very simple paper, and this is some of my Easter egg dyed cardstock. And that's going to work really well there. And then these will go in, and you can see that there's a lot of room. So I've got room to add some pockets, a writing board, and some tags and all kinds of things, and there's gobs and gobs of room there for me to do that. So that is my plan. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and glue these in, and there it is. I am going to use the 3-in-1 because, again, we are gluing mostly paper to fabric. So there's just this little bit of paper to paper, but paper to fabric. I'm going to be, well, maybe a little heavier handed on the glue and make sure I get good coverage all the way around the edges. And then I think I will go ahead and get some ideas of tags and cut some things and get things ready. And I'll show you this next stage. I think, though, I glue those in. I think the next thing I want to do is go ahead and sew these in. So let me get these glued in. I'll create a template. We'll go over that real quick. We'll do that first. Okay. So just skip over this section if you've seen lots of demos on 3-hole pamphlet stitch. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but I do want to show that I've cut a little piece of paper here and made sure that it fits without a problem inside the spine area, which it does. And so what I did was I folded it in half and then folded it down about 1 inch because all my pages are the same height. If they weren't the same height, I would have to think about this perhaps a little differently. I use both sides, both edges of the ruler. Sometimes inches is easier and sometimes millimeters is easier. So in this case, what I was discovering is that, okay, this is 1 3/4, so 7/8 is the middle. But I'm going to switch over here because I have smaller increments here with the centimeters. So if I have five signatures, so I need 1 in the middle and 2 on each side. I have 10, 20. So if I do, so usually what I do is play with a pencil and then mark with a pen. So if I go to 7 and then 7, so 7 and then 7, and that gives me just over 5. And that will allow room. And I always think about here at the end, it's like I'm going to put a writing board in the back and I'm going to put a pocket in the front. So I want to have a little extra room on the front and back. And by moving side to side by 7, and there's 7. Yeah, it's close enough. You know, because this is very tiny marking, so if I do that, I'm leaving plenty of room for things at the end. And then I'm just going to make it easy on myself and fold that over to this direction. Let me go ahead and give myself that, and I'm going to go here, here, well, I'll do it this way. Really hard to see in this lighting. Okay, so there, and I'll fold that, well, I'll fold that over because I can see it better. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now they're all nicely lined up. This is an old mouse pad that I can poke into. I need a couple of clips here. Okay, I'm going to poke all these holes and see how visible they are. I might need to do a little extra marking. Yeah, it's really hard to see those holes, but I can see them. So I think what I'm going to do, I've got a light green Sharpie here. I'm going to try it on a piece of scrap over here. Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay. I'm just going to put little dots where I see the points. Yeah, this is going to help. So those holes are, there it is. Those holes are really hard to see. If I can't see them, you certainly can't see them. The pointy tool, the awl, there it is. The pointy tool can find them. And then once there's thread through those holes, you can kind of see it now. Once there's thread through those holes, that marking will disappear, because, especially since I'm going to use embroidery floss and I hadn't decided which of these colors I wanted to use. Do I want some strong contrast? Do I want Do I want to alternate? Well, I've got 5. I can do 3 dark green and 2 light green. Well, that would be fun. That would be fun. Okay. And I always start with the back signature, whatever I consider the back. And right now I'm considering this the back. Once it's all in, then it'll definitely be the back. And work my way to the front. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do alternate. And that'll look nice out on the front, the outside of the spine. Okay, I will get ready for that and run through it real quick. I always like to cut my threads, just get them ready. Here's the template I used for the spine, and I'm just setting it inside. This is such a slender signature. There's only 6 pieces of paper there. So a lot of my bulky signatures, I would have a lot more clips, but I don't have to worry about it too much because these are such slender, and they don't have different sizes. There's not different sizes, heights, and yeah, I've sewn in a lot of very complicated signatures, and if you have, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and get these holes poked, and I'm going to start with the signature that will go in the back. Come on, get in there. And work my way to the front. And I usually, well, on this one, because I want long tails, yeah, these holes are, because I want long tails, I have 4 pliers. I need my pliers. I cut 4 lengths of top to bottom of the signature because I want long tails, and also it makes it easier to leave the signature loose. I'm going to have to do a little extra poking of the holes. So what I need to do is I need to go in and I have to make sure I have an extra amount of penetration through all that cardboard. There. That's going to make it a lot easier to get the needle through. But pliers are a great thing to have. And then the tricky part is finding the hole over here. I can see the hole more because I did an extra push on it. These other holes are very faint because they only got the point of the needle. So I'm going to be re-establishing the holes from the inside as I go. Another reason I'm making this style with smaller signatures is what I discovered is that they lay flat for writing. It's just another style, just another choice, as it is with all of these things. So I kind of know that this is going to be a long tail, so I'm leaving it as such. But also leaving it extra long, it gives me room to leave these kinds of lengths. So I hope that all makes sense, because I have to do the spine and the signatures separate from each other, since it's such a yeah, it can be a challenge sometimes. Quite honestly, it can be. Okay, so now I want to start tightening this up. And back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But I still want to go through separately. And I can feel the point of the needle coming through. So that does help. Now, before I tie a knot, I think I'll level these off a bit. So, pull that through, that through, that through. So I don't need to get them exact, but I want to get them, oh, that's very close. Okay, tighten it all up. Take that off and make sure there's one on each side. As I said, you know, and for such a small signature, a double knot is all you need. Okay, so there's number 1. 4 more to go. See you in a minute. Starting to get dark outside. Took a break to make dinner and stuff. So it's getting a little dimmer, but I think we'll keep going here. I have all the signatures in, and because of this smaller signatures and I don't know, it's laying down nice and flat. Wherever I open it, it's laying down flat, making it easy to write in. And this design is mostly for writing, but we definitely have room to grow. It's lots of room to grow, so I want to grow it a little bit for sure. So let's see. Oh, and with the signatures, I cut the embroidery floss really long, sort of crazy long, and so it's just really long. I didn't need to do 4 lengths. 3 would have been fine. But on the other hand, what I wound up with is this long tail. So I was thinking, what can I do with that? So I could just leave them hanging out the bottom. That's what I did here, is I just let them hang out the bottom, but they weren't quite as long. So I thought, you know what I could do? If I bring them all to the top and I tied a knot, I'm going to, when we get to the end, I'm going to get out, like, 3 beads or something like that, and make kind of a tassel out of this, a little beaded tassel. And then it can be flipped, it can be flipped out of the way so that everything lies down. But I was thinking, wouldn't that be cute? I can just go ahead and turn that into a beaded thing. That'd be really fun. I'll have to see what kind of beads I have that go with that. So, I still have a scrap of fabric, and these are my scraps, and I want to use my scraps up in here, and I've got plenty of room to do that. I know I want to put a pocket up front, and I know I want to put a belly band in the back. So I was thinking of I pulled out some other coordinating scraps of green, and I think what I'll do is I'll create a belly band, and this will be the base for the belly band. You can see I've got room for glue on the top and bottom. I might skinny that up a bit. So I have this piece, and that's one of the first things I want to do, is I want to back that. Well, it won't. It's longer than this. I could go this way, or I could cover it. Yeah, I could cover it with some of this, and it's not real sturdy. So I think I'm going to cut. If I put 2 layers, yeah, if I put a layer on the front and the back, it would be much sturdier. However, I think I'm going to get a stiffer piece of cardboard than this, because a writing board should be stiff. So my first thing that I'm going to cut from scrap is a writing board and do a belly band, because I really want to use scrap to do that. And then I'm going to go through, and I want to put kind of I want to put a pocket up front of some sort, and I want to put some features inside here. I used some fabric in the previous version to make some of my pockets, so I think I'll do that again. Let me get that all set up, and yeah, show you what I've got ready to go. It's 24 hours later, and I spent a lot of time with all the bits and pieces that I put in this. And I just went ahead and did that off camera. Cutting paper, adding layers. I don't think you need to see that, but I'm going to show you what I did with the fabric and whatnot. And I also wanted to get started with the editing to see what else I needed to add since I had goofed up at the very intro. So, but yeah, so here's what I did with the beads. I just went into the beads I had. I don't, I'm really focusing on using what I have. And I'm so blessed to have all that I do have. So, yes, I do want to use things that I have. And I had these beads, and I was able to get the thread through them. And just want to show you though that I couldn't get all those strands in the smaller beads, so I just put two strands through the small beads, and then I actually used a crochet hook to pull all the strands through the big beads, and then just had to tie a knot at the end, which was a little bit tricky because the strands were getting short. I used a needle to get the last two threads by poking the needle into the knot and then threading those last two little threads and then just running the needle through the knot. So that worked. And it's fun. And there's what the alternating colors of the embroidery floss look like. That worked well. So we have a nice soft cover. There's a little bit of cush in it from using the quilt batting. And so I've just gone ahead and made a bunch of goodies. So first off, took a piece of lightweight cardstock and glued some of the fabric to it, turned the fabric under, and yeah, so this one has a gusset, so things will fit all the way over to the edge. And I used the fabric to create the gusset at the bottom, so there's a little bit of extra room down there as well. So I was using up scraps, and I used up all but a tiny little bit. So just a real simple little notebook. And I had pulled out some coordinating cardstock, and I had a whole bunch of my rubber stamps. I do have a lot of leaf rubber stamps. So you can see that this is the lattice paper, and I layered it, and then I went, oh, time to start rubber stamping. This is also a whale tail punch for a tab, and it gave me an idea, which you are going to see in a moment. But that's kind of just a bookmark, right? And so there's a couple more of the offcuts. So I kind of did the same thing in each signature. I would do two of the same thing, and I didn't do them in order by any means. It was very random. I did something back here and then here, in and out, just looking for different things that I wanted to do. So these were some of the last things that I did. I had some leaf stickers. So this was like one of the last little remnants. And so just fiddling around with some of my materials. I only used a few of my stickers. I was looking through all my stickers to see if I had leafy ones. So I've got these two, and there's another one in the back. I'm not sure what else is back there at this point. So I did include a couple of stickers there, and then I decided with some of the other scraps that I had, I would just make it a little side tuck. Because these scraps didn't go all the way across, so that gave me a reason to put a little extra strip on. So it's just, yeah, see what's working and adapt. There we go. And again, these are just the simple pages. So what I decided to do is I did a little bit of a theme with this paper. I think I did it on all of them, so we'll check. This is washi tape, and it is folded under, and I put some extra glue under it to make sure it stayed put. And yeah, just turned the little edges under and then glued it down. So when I was saying about the whale tail, so I was going, well, I do have a couple of leaf punches, but one's a maple leaf and one is an oak leaf. And none of these are maple or oak. Well, I could cut my own, you know? So I played around. Let's see. I started with trying this shape, and then it was sort of one of those duh moments where I looked at the shapes that are on this paper and, well, I just wanted to emulate these shapes and these designs. This is a rubber stamp, so I just cut around it and then just had a little fun with my rubber stamps. So these are essentially journal card tags. But yeah, so there's those rubber stamps. So I decided I would make them all a little different. Let me go ahead and go to where I have the next ones. Nope, that one was different. There they are. Okay, so this was another set. So I made a different leaf. Same kind of pocket, but with these, okay, so these, you can actually see that kind of shape in the scrapbook paper. So I was emulating that. Just playing around. So yeah, just make up your own tag toppers, right? And I think I did it one more time. Yes, I did it one more time. And this picks up one of these other patterns that are, I think it's this pattern over here, but I did it with a white pen. And a couple of rubber stamps. And there's another pattern again. So that was the play that I had with that idea of creating tag toppers, just little custom tag toppers. Okay, so we did that. So now in this signature, now this is some of the fabric. I glued it to some paper strips, rounded the corners, and then just glued it on, So, but it did need to be attached, glued to some paper, just to give it a little more body. And I have this decorative punch. So this was one strip of paper. I folded it in half because it was very thin paper and punched all these out at once. So it was going through 2 sheets of paper at the same time. And then I had the dark, and I went, well, that looks real pretty. I think that looks nice just that way, or that way. Or it can hide and then be a surprise. And so again, I did it on both sides. So it's the same thing, fabric glued to paper and making a pocket. Okay. All right, went a little different with this one. Decided to do a flip out on that side. And on this side, you can see the bow. This a little waterfall paper pad. And I just poked holes with my awl and sewed some embroidery floss on there. So, something a little different. Now on the whole, and there's another, this is one of the 2-inch scraps that I mentioned, the offcuts, what they could be used for. So I made a couple of belly bands with those. And this was the last bit of my Easter egg dyed cardstock. So a little bit more rubber stamping on this. It's a nice tight fit. And I did it on this side as well. So kind of matched sides. Okay. And then in the middle of this one was this. Okay, next one. I continued, I did a couple more of these fabric glued to paper. This was some of the offcut. I just inked the edges, played with some rubber stamps. These were 4 different rubber stamps. And I did, yep, same thing on the other side. Just a little fun play with that. Okay, and in the middle here, so here are those decorative punch. I punched a long strip so that I could just cut it to size. A little bit different kind of pocket with the same paper as the diagonal pockets. And this actually, that's actually a little tuck spot up there as well. These were the offcuts from here. I went, oh, well, why not? A little more fabric. I had a lot of this lightweight paper in my stash, so I went, okay, time for a couple more notebooks. And all I did with this is they were long pieces. I folded them in half. I have a long arm stapler. I can't reach this far with my regular stapler. I do have a long arm, so I just went ahead and stapled it to a piece of cardstock on the back and glued the fabric on to cover up the staples. And that's all there is to that. And I made 2 of them. Okay, so that is that signature. Okay, this signature needs something, and I have a thought with that. And there's the center as we saw. And so I didn't have anything here or here. And I had a thought of what I could do. Since I made these leaf toppers, and I was thinking, what can I do here that would be a little different? So let me pursue that idea. I got the idea and I went for it. So I took a piece of this scrap paper. I like to use expired catalogs for my glue up pages or making a template. So I tried making like a big giant leaf that could flip out. So I made 2 of them, one for the front part and one for the back. So all I got to do is glue that down. Oh, wait a minute. I was thinking I could leave some of it open as a tuck spot. All right, rethink this. I forgot. Okay, so if I was going to leave this as a tuck spot, I only want it glued down here. Maybe not all the way to the bottom. Okay, that is dry, so that won't affect it. And putting the stem right there at the bottom. Okay. Let me see if that's a good idea. And no reason why not. There's a little scrap. Oops. There we go. Yeah. Why not? Leave it as a little tuck spot. Fun. All right. I wanted to do something with this last one, so that worked out. Okay, let's try it with this one. And I inked the edges because it's just white on white, so it would kind of just disappear. So that came out kind of cool. All right, so now I can consider it finished. And back here, this was one of my first uses of one of those 2-inch strips, was to make it a double belly band. Come on. There we go. This is just something I had in my stash, and it went so well because it's just leaves, it's herbs. So I went, well, make a double belly band, and then I went, what shall I put in it? And that just, there it was. So here's another one of those stickers. It's mostly leaves, and that worked out. So this is just a writing board, nice and stiff. Needs a little help getting in. There we go. Okay, now the other thing that, as I meant, well, let's see. I'm not sure whether it was in the intro or if it was one of the things I got cut out. But when I trimmed all these pages, there was a section up at the top that got trimmed off, and there was a lot. So I just made two little pads out of it, stapled them together, and just tied a little embroidery floss around it to hold them closed. So there's two of these little guys. And then whenever I sell a journal, as much as possible, I include offcuts. So there's just this one little offcut from the lattice design paper, and there was this little offcut from my Easter egg dyed cardstock, and then just a few bits and pieces. I included a little of this paper, and then I thought it might be nice to provide somebody with a little bit of this punched paper. So that's available to play with. The last little bitty piece of fabric, and just a couple of the other remnants. That is it. And there's one of my little leaf templates. So all of this comes with the journal, which is in my Etsy shop for sale. So I hope you got some ideas from this. It's a very simple journal. I didn't want to put a lot of embellishment in it. I didn't want to get crazy with it because I wanted the series of journals I'm doing is more about creating a foundation for somebody else who loves leaves, who loves green, and wants to make their own journal with it. I mean, you know, maybe somebody presses leaves, and they could have some wonderful fun adding real pressed leaves into this journal and doing some fun things and making notes about where did that leaf come from, and just some fun stuff like that. I mean, there's just a million possibilities, but I wanted to create something really pretty that was fun for somebody else to take and run with it. So hopefully I accomplished that. And it was the same with this one and some of the other ones that I have been making. So probably the next one I'm going to be doing more embellishing because I like to do it too. So anyway, I will stop jabbering on, and I hope you got some ideas. Thank you so much for being here and staying this long with the video. So please join me next time. Leave me a comment. I would love to hear from you. Bye for now.